It's space time! Welcome back for episode 3 of my playthrough of Kerbal Space Program. Here we are. We are actually launching our very first Kerbal mission. We're going to come back to the satellite in a specific orbit. We do have a mission to test the Sephitrons in orbit, so we're actually going to use those to deorbit us. And we have a mission to return from orbit of Kerbin, so we're going to complete both of those. We've got Valentina flying, and this will be our very first Kerbal mission. I have set up those Sephitrons to be an abort system in the event of emergency, as we have had in previous launches. So without further ado, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition, and liftoff! Valentina is off on her way into the very first Kerbal space mission. We'll go ahead and get a crew report here. Not worth that much, but we might as well do it. We'll collect that in the containers so we can take more of them. And let's start turning. We actually are pretty late. We have much more control of this rocket. We've been throttled back a bit. We have a pretty high thrust to weight ratio. And keep turning over. How are you doing, Valentina? Enjoying yourself? Valentina has the honor of being the very first Kerbal in space, hopefully. Let's find out what happens. Ideally, we'll put it into a somewhat elliptical orbit so we can get some science both from low Kerbin orbit, or low Gael orbit, I should say, and also high Gael orbit. But the most important thing is to actually get to orbit. We only have about 700 delta V in this upper stage, so I want to make sure that we get enough lateral velocity from the booster stage that we will be able to actually reach orbit. And it looks like we will. We can throttle back some more as we're getting this heating. We're coming up against atmospheric, what they call max Q, maximum aerodynamic pressure. We've throttled back and we're good. Oh, totally forgot that, I didn't put a thermometer or anything on here. So that's okay. We are going to have enough velocity, it looks like, which is fantastic. Alright, so we can get an upper atmosphere crew report. We'll keep that data and we'll transfer it to the data collection pod. Go ahead and ditch this stage. And we're in space, so let's go ahead and take the materials bay as well. We'll take that here. And we can take another crew report from space. Transfer it here. Because Valentina's a pilot, we don't have to worry about line of sight for control, which is great. And let's go ahead and fire up this engine. It does look like she will make orbit. It's going to be cutting it close. We might not get the elliptical orbit that I was planning on, but that's okay. In order to complete the mission, we only need to get a orbit. It doesn't really matter what kind of orbit. And there we go. It appears we have reached orbit. Let's make sure our periapsis is out of the atmosphere. It is. Fantastic. Did we take the crew report from space? I think we did, but we'll keep it anyway, just to be sure. I'm going to go ahead and ditch that boost stage now. It's useless, and we're going to actually warp to the other side of the planet so that we re-enter during the day. We should have plenty of battery power for this mission. I'm going to do this more about here. Pulling ourselves retrograde. Now let's just make sure the Sepatron mission. Oh, I did not catch that part. We had to be over 400,000 meters, so that's a problem, but we'll go ahead and fire them. And it did successfully deorbit us. There's no heat shield, but this pod, wow, that was more than I expected. But we are going to re-enter. This pod shouldn't need the heat shield. It's supposed to be relatively protected for re-entry. I'm actually going to turn off the SAS. It's supposed to be aerodynamically stable. But I might turn it on as soon as we get into the atmosphere and kind of turn, just get ourselves facing the right general direction. Because if not, we can get some wobbling, which is less than convenient. And at this point, let's make sure that Valentina survives her re-entry as the first Kerbal to orbit Gael and return safely to the surface. Catching up some atmospheric heat as she comes in. Alright, we've survived the heat. And the parachute is deployed. She should be good. It's a shame that she's coming down in the dark. Now let's find out. I have this planet shine thing. I've never used it before. I don't know how to... Maybe I can... Yeah, that's good. Cool. That's definitely going to be convenient for filming, so we can actually film things that happen at night. No, we can go ahead also collect it. Okay, so we had that. Let's take a crew report from the water and recover Valentina. So that mission did not go entirely as planned because I didn't read what the mission was. I would have designed a vehicle for that specific requirement if I had actually read it. But we did recover from orbit, and Valentina was raised to level 1, so that's great. So now what we're going to do is we are going to launch nope, that's not what we want. Definitely not what we want. No, we're going to start new. We're going to bring Gaelcom 2. Let's see. Go with that. Got to put on a reaction wheel, battery as a standard. Put on this engine, this motor. Really, motor is a better word to use generally when you're talking about rockets, but for our purposes, we'll say either one is fine. I'm going to put a nose cone on it this time. That might help us keep control. Put 4 batteries. Those aren't lined up correctly. put on 2 of these. And I do believe the mission will require a thermometer. Great. So we'll add a thermometer. We don't need 2. We'll only add 1. The coupler. Now, do I have fairings? Oh, I do. Great. So we can actually launch this in a fairing, which means that we don't actually need the nose cone. And we'll go ahead and use that guy. And take 2 of these with a swivel, and that should give us more than enough delta V to do what we need to do. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'm going to add also these small fins again, just to make sure that we keep control, I hope. And make sure our staging is correct. First this guy, then that. That'll fire with it. That'll open. And that will fire. And let's set up an action group that will extend the antennas. Oops. Don't do that. Action group 1 will extend the antennas. That was dangerous. We're going to call this Gaelcom H for high, but we're probably going to end up bringing him down. If we have enough delta V left, we'll probably move it back down to a synchronous orbit after we've completed the mission. All right, let's launch. And orbit info. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. We have liftoff. Let's let him go straight up for a little bit. Gain a little speed before we start turning over. Hopefully that will prevent us from spinning out too much. We do have a gimbaling engine and an SAS module, so that should hopefully be very helpful. I'm going to rotate him so that we're lined up with the 90 degrees, so we can try to get as close to equatorial as possible, because it looks like the orbit we need to get to is equatorial. Alright, we're just turning, pretty standard launch here. As long as we don't spin out of control, it's a standard launch. We've been having some trouble with that so far in this career, but that shouldn't happen much anymore. We're improving, building better rockets. I've upgraded the pad, the tracking station, and the VAB, so we have more parts, we have more accuracy in our orbit tracking, our patch conics. I can go ahead and throttle this down as we're getting up to higher speeds. I like to try to keep, you can see down here, the G-forces, I like to try to keep that in the green, if possible. Alright, we've got a pretty good trajectory going on, so that's a plus, definitely a plus, and we have a ton of delta V in these 2 upper stages. I think this may be able to get the job done as long as we're able to keep contact with the probe when we need it. And that's something that we may not be able to do. We don't have that many ComSats up. We only have 1. All right. At this point, we can ditch this stage. I just ditch the fairing. Let's make sure we're meeting all of the conditions we need. Great, so we only need to reach the desired orbit, and we have a ton of delta V to do so. All right, so I'm going to turn him this way in case we lose contact. We're also going to go ahead, open up those antennas. Now, how far off is our inclination? So we're inclined 8 degrees compared to the equator, but we're only 4 degrees off from that orbit, which is fantastic, actually. All right, and let's fire up this stage. These clouds are beautiful. This is from the EVE, the what's it called? Something visual enhancements. It's a great mod, makes things look pretty. It's a little taxing on the computer. I'm using the low res option because I don't have a supercomputer here. I'm running a laptop, with an i5 GeForce 930M. So it's not a supercomputer. It's definitely not going to get the same kind of performance that you see in some other people's videos. So that's why we're doing the low res, because I want the beauty. And when you're in orbit and things like that, it usually looks pretty good, especially from a higher orbit. So this is not exactly ideal. We're coming back down, but we are going to reach orbit. Great. So now, we're still at a 4-degree inclination. That's not bad at all. What we basically need is 11,000. Great, so a circular orbit. So basically, we'll just keep burning until our apoapse gets to about 11,000 kilometers. And then we'll stop. Perfect. Now let's turn retrograde, because we might not be able to control on the other side of the orbit. That's a problem we always have to watch out for. Still have some fuel in this stage, which is fantastic. We're definitely going to be able to complete this mission. I should put a Septron on, and that would have allowed us to complete the Septron mission as well. Oh, so we are going to have control, which is nice. All right, and we can. Oh, we don't have control, so it's good that we're pointed relatively in the right direction, and then we'll go until either this stage runs out or we get towards what we need. That's pretty close. Once we get to, we're just going to warp until we have a connection again. Great. So what we're going to want to do when we get over here is burn south. This is ascending. So we're going to want to burn south. I'm going to get ourselves pointed south already so that when we get there, whether or not we have signal, we can execute our inclination burn. We actually do have signal, which is convenient. We're going to try to get that down. All right. How much? 0. 0 is good. So now, what we're going to want to do, I'm going to point us retrograde so that we'll be pointed prograde when we get to the apoapse, because we're pretty much at the periapsis right now. And we want to just get a little bit more circular there, which will complete this mission. Yep, no control, so we're going to have to be very careful. We can only use full throttle or cut throttle, so great. Now to complete the mission, we're actually going to have to get signal. I think this is probably close enough, but let's find out when we get signal. It is, so we completed it. That's great. So now what I actually want to do, because we're here and we can use this, we're going to lower our orbit and try to bring it in to this same synchronous orbit that the other guy is in. Okay, and now we're going to do the opposite, point prograde, so we'll be pointed retrograde on the other side of the orbit and be able to bring him in. Now, the real question is, we want to have a decent separation from that other ComSat there when we get over. We don't want him to be in the same place we are. All right, great. All right, this stage is done. Where's the planet? There's the planet. Look at that. All right, let's drop it. Get ourselves here. And again, we just want to get this orbital period to 1 day. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 29 seconds off. See if we can get better. Wow. Less than a second. That's fantastic. All right, let's look on the map. So it looks like what I want to do, if we have a connection, we do. I think we need to burn south. Let's see. I want to try to get our inclination closer to 0. Yeah. So I'm just going to watch this as long as it keeps going down. Oh. It's 3.9 degrees. Just for kicks, let's make sure they can talk to each other, which is great. And we'll go to the Gaelcom 3, the previous one, and we'll see what we can do about his inclination. So he's going to have to burn north. Again, we're going to watch until that number starts going back up. All right, that's pretty good. Now, got to go retrograde a little bit, because what happened is, while we did that, it also changed our orbit a little bit. So now we have a little bit too much time. We need to basically all right, 10 seconds, that's fine. You know, we can actually switch to him again. We're going to rename him Gaelcom 4. step. And now I can actually set the outcome 3 as a target. And we can try to use the ascending or descending node there. So which one's coming up? The ascending node. So let's point south. And we'll just try to adjust accordingly when we get to that node. There we go. Oh, why is it not? Okay. Close enough. We are pretty close. And within a few degrees, I think we're okay. There we are, a second ComSat. We're very close to being able to communicate with any probed spacecraft in the Gael system, which is exactly what we need. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.